Hello.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi.
I've been reading you since 1983. And I will tell you that when I read Original Blessing, you saved my life in terms of being able to find God in an experience of my soul that I knew that what the church was teaching me was wrong and that the Spirit of God was very different than what we learned in our parochial school. And what I want to ask you today is, I'm looking at our audience, we're mostly over 40, right? Or higher. I'm trying to be generous, come on. And I work with young children. I actually teach sacraments in my parish, but I told the priest when I started I would never teach mortal and venial sin. Forget about it. I will teach the children what they can do and what they should do. And what I experience with children and with young adults is they are looking for something that allows them to be of service and to use their energy to the world. But we're all over 40. How do we convert the passion that we all are having in this room into that next generation that I believe mostly does not see color, does not see religion, does not see gender, loves nature, and wants to do the right thing?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say, well, let me say a couple things. First of all, don't put yourself down because you're over 40, or 50, or 60, or 70, or 80. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago off of Georgia, 700 people, and at the end, this woman comes up to me, she says, I'm 93 years old. She said, I was thinking of not coming this year, but I'm so glad I came. Everything you talked about just turned me on. She didn't turn me on. She said, Mister, you lit my fire. And I said, congratulations. I want to praise you for having a fire to light at 93. So, but my point is very serious, and that is the role of the elder. You know, the elder has been utterly put down, trivialized, reductionism done on the elder in our culture. The myth is that you go and go and go, you're 65, and then you get out and you cash in, and you spend the rest of your life at the golf course or watching TV. That is so illusory, it is so evil. The young people need the elders. And but the elders have to wake up to what it means to be an elder. Just having white hair doesn't mean you're an elder. An elder has to do the inner work. But there's a lot of special inner work that you do when you no longer have to put food on the table for your kids. So when that moment happens, rejoice, take a week off or something, and then ask yourself two questions. Not, am I retired? Because I propose throwing the word retirement out the window. I think it's an obscene word. It's an obscene word. The question is, am I refired? What is the fire in my belly that's calling me now? And a lot of elders are being called to help save the earth as we know it. And certainly to work with the youngest generation that is altogether organic. The grandparents and the grandchildren. Forget the parents, they're running things. But the real radical ideas come that way. Now here's a very important scientific fact. A couple years ago, a woman anthropologist gathered a team, and they did this study on why the Neanderthals disappeared and our ancestors didn't. Now the myth going around under patriarchal anthropology was, well, we beat them all up, of course. We had war with them all, and we won. We're number one. Reptilian brain wins again. But they're now finding that most of us are walking around with Neanderthal DNA inside of us. So we weren't just making war, were we? So that's not the answer. This is the answer that she found. That your average Neanderthal died in his and her 40s. There were no grandparents. There were no elders. I have goosebumps right now. Being an elder is not something to be tapped on the head for. It's a responsibility. It's a vocation, a new vocation to become refired. And the second dimension is be rewired. Refired and rewired, because as you get older, you become more mystical. You become more aware of the presence of beauty and the presence of loss and the end of things in this version of our bodies and lives. So that growing awareness of beauty. There's this wonderful story. I was at a program a few months ago with this heart specialist guy, Bernie Siegel. And he told this amazing story. He said, so there was this guy in Chicago he was working on who was dying. And he said, okay, well, you're going to die. Where do you want to die? And the guy said, I think I want to go to a beautiful place. I'll go to Colorado. And he said, okay, but leave my number with your family so I can go to your funeral. Fine, they did it. So 5-6 months passed, and he realized his family never called about the guy's funeral. So he dialed the one number he had, and the guy's at the other end. And the guy says, the place was so beautiful, I forgot to die. But you know, you don't have to go to Colorado to find beauty. That's what meditation is about. Take a leaf. Take a leaf and spend time with it. You know, take an animal, take a tree, take a stone, take water. Everywhere we're being blessed by the cosmic Christ in all things. And that's how life is. And so as we get older and, you know, we get hints from our body and the rest that, you know, this doesn't go on forever, you want to drink in as much as possible, but also you want to fight with the younger generation so that they and their ancestors, 7 generations from today, will have a healthy and a beautiful existence on this planet. So being an elder is not for sissies. It's a way to become more prophetic and more mystical. And find the music that really moves you. Find the prayer that really works for you and makes you more courageous. Find the community, the circle of friends, and not just two-legged friends. Find your other friends that are out there blessing you, making you strong and beautiful. Now, having said that, linking up to the young. So this young woman here said, talk about the order of the sacred earth. I will. I have to. Thanks. I didn't plant her either. A year ago, I started a new order, spiritual order, not a religious order, with 2 young people, a 32-year-old guy and a 29-year-old woman. It came to me in a dream one day, 3 years ago. The dream said, woke me up at 4 a.m. and said, do it. Capital letters and exclamation points. I've never had a dream so clearly a command as that. Do what? Start an order. Not a religious order, but a spiritual order. So everyone is invited to this order from any tradition, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, atheist, because we take one vow. This is the vow. I promise to be the best lover of earth and the best defender of earth that I can be. So we had our first vow-taking ceremonies last solstice, a year ago. And we had 80 people showed up at a Buddhist center in Berkeley, took the vow, and there were indigenous people, there were Buddhists and Jews and Christians, and at least one atheist. She came up to me after, said, I'm 28 and I'm an atheist, but I'm looking for a community, and I read about your values. She said, I want to be part of this. I said, you're very welcome. We did a ceremony together, a ritual of the 80 of us, and took our vows. And other people are doing it around the country, in many states now. So I want you to think seriously about this, because so many people are fed up with institutional religion, especially young, but not just the young. What might be another step? Well, when I look at history, and I kind of been trained to look at history a bit, this is what I notice. When religion goes bad, 3rd century, you had the Desert Father and Mother movement. So these young people, they weren't always fathers and mothers, they went out to the desert to get away from the values of the dominant culture. 5th, 6th century, you had Benedict and Scholastica, his sister, starting the Benedictine movement, which, of course, did important things for about 1,000 years. And then, well, still, and, at least the women. So, Sister Joan Chittister and Hildegard. But anyway, then the Middle Ages, the monastic system went corrupt. They got fat and lazy, and they were too tied to the feudal system. So they were going out of it, and that's when Francis popped up along with Dominic. And they realized a new form and so forth, and they did a new thing. And then in the 16th century, you had the Protestant Reformation, which I understand, frankly, as a series of lay religious orders. Each of the denominations has like a different charismatic leader and different theology, different rituals, all that. And then, of course, same century, you had Ignatius and the Jesuits, all of that responding, of course, to the corruption in the Vatican at the time. Today, 20th century, I look around, and everyone's leaving church. I don't see anything happening. And I think that's why I got this dream. Now, it happened to Skylar, this young man, who, by the way, does not call himself a Christian. He says his church is the wilderness. He does writes a passage for teenagers, and he does Vision Quest for adults in the wilderness and all this. That's his. He's from Florida, too. And but he's living in the Bay Area with his girlfriend, soon to be his wife. And she's on board, too. So we put together this book where the three of us, the founders of the order, if you will, one elder and two co-directors. They're the directors, not me. I'm in the background. But we put together this book, Order of the Sacred Earth. So the first half is us writing about it, and the second half is short essays by people, some of whom you may recognize, like Mirabai Starr, Brian Swim, David Corton, Carol Vaccarello, Theodore Richards, and other people, and some young people you have not heard about yet. So they wrote responses to it. And I'd like to share with you just one response. That's from Brian Swim, the cosmologist. Just one short paragraph that he wrote that I think is very important, and especially because we have Ilya in our midst, who is a renowned scientist in her own right. Here's Brian responding to the idea of the order of the sacred earth. Think about this, he says. An individual hydrogen atom cannot transform itself into carbon, nitrogen, or phosphorus. An individual hydrogen atom will persist as it is without change for billions of years. Sounds like the church. Oh, no. It sounds like education. Oh, no. At the most, it might disintegrate into an electron and a proton. It will never create anything new by itself. But the amazing fact is that if a hydrogen atom finds itself in the intense and interacting community called a star, it discovers that it has the power to participate in crucial ways in its transformation into the elements that give birth to life. In the community called a star, an individual atom becomes a gateway into the next era of the universe's story. Now that was his response to the order of the sacred earth, that this kind of community, some of it online, but what we want people to do, we call this a, I'm going to get that word right, self-organizing community. Pods, we call them pods. So you create a pod where you are with people you know, etc. Start a pod. And then you guys decide what those vowels mean in your circumstances, what it means to be defending Mother Earth where you are. But then you stay in touch online and so forth with the other pods that are happening. And hey, we might have something here, because I see an order as kind of a halfway step between religion and nothing. People still want community, and they want to focus. Now, there's this one lesson. We must learn a lesson from St. Francis and Dominic. Francis, when he started his order, it was very successful, and he did not want his brothers to be priests because he was smart. And we've sentimentalized him, putting him on a bird bath in our bathrooms or something. This guy saw through things. He didn't want his men joining that hierarchy. But what did they do? They took the order away from him. And he died 2 years later. I think he died of a broken heart. I think he saw what was coming, because within one generation, the Franciscans were running the Inquisition. And so were the Dominicans. The same thing happened with the Dominicans. So that's my lesson from history. Oops, religion and orders, you pay a price. But a spiritual order that's beholden to no particular headquarters and no one philosophy, and the earth is calling us. There's no such thing, as I said in my Cosmic Christ book 30 years ago, as a Roman Catholic rainforest and a Buddhist ocean and a Lutheran sun and a Baptist moon and an atheist cornfield. Once you put religion in the context of creation again, everything changes. And that's, I think, what an order might play a real important role today. and especially with the young. But the subtitle of the book is called Order of the Sacred Earth, an intergenerational vision of love and action. I love that. Intergenerational. That's where the elders have a role to play. One more point. I did a book on young adult spirituality a few years ago, Occupy Spirituality, it's called, with Adam Bucko, a wonderful saint, a young man who worked for 15 years with homeless young adults living in New York City in the streets. An amazing guy. He's now being ordained an Episcopal priest this year. But we did a survey of young people. We define young as 20 to 33 all over the country. One of the questions we asked was, what role do elders play in your life? 97% said, we want elders and we can't find them. And then they added, and the few we do find, talk too much. So there's a good lesson there too. Our first job today as elders is to listen. Truly, to ask questions and to listen deeply. Because this generation is going through, 12 years left. Many young people today are having a hard time deciding whether they're going to bring babies into the world because of what's going on and not going on, etc. This is a very real point in human and planetary history. And so our first job as elders is to listen. There will be a time to respond and tell our stories, but that's the first job, to listen. But, that's the second job. First job is go out and find these young people. They're looking for you. Get off the golf courses. Get out of playing the stock market. Get over your adolescent addictions and start realizing you have a role to play as an elder. And for some elders, it also means giving some money away. And if you're so afraid of your mortality that you have to hang on to your pyramids and your golden towers, that's a sign of a lost soul. A lost soul thinks they'll find immortality in these kind of projects. That's not how you live forever. And Jesus put it pretty bluntly. And so there's an invitation here for everybody. So I hope I'll be hearing before too long about pods in your corner of the country that you people get started. And I think many young people are eager to sign on.
Okay, we'll have time for one more question, and we have all day tomorrow, too, for more, so think of other great questions.
My question to you is, I'm sure you, when Pope Francis was here, you listened to his talk in Congress of the United States. There, he mentioned 4 persons that were extremely special in the United States. One was President Lincoln. The other one was Martin Luther King. The other one was Dorothy Day. And the last one was Thomas Merton, which you was mentioning a few minutes ago. What was your take in regards to that expression of the Pope looking at, for example, Dorothy Day, that had a lot of problems with the Catholic Church, and Thomas Merton, too?
Well, I agree with him. I think those are 4 true giants, but we have so many. Howard Thurman, who I talked about earlier, who really was such a support to Dr. King and his vision. Mary Oliver, who just died, who was in our midst, a really authentic, creation-centered mystic and poet who called herself a praise poet. But it did not come easily because she, in fact, was sexually abused by her father as a child. And the day she graduated from high school, and then she went to her mother, and her mother did not listen to her, which often happens. The day she graduated from high school, she left home and never came home again. Never. She had to go out. She said it took her years to get back her love of life. But then, when she did get it back, she gifted us for decades about the spirituality of creation, the present kingdom and queendom of God. So, and of course, Whitman, and there are just so many heroes and sheroes in our lineage, and we should praise all. But of course, the Pope only chose 4. But he chose 4 terrific ones. When I was a kid, Abraham Lincoln was absolutely my hero. I read everything about him. When I was like 11 or 12, my mom took me and a friend to all the Lincoln places in the Midwest. I grew up in Wisconsin, Springfield and in other places. And it was just so meaningful to me. So, in fact, I remember choosing between following Lincoln and becoming a lawyer and going into politics or giving the Dominicans a shot, and I gave them a shot. And I haven't regretted it most of the time. But anyway, no, I respect him very much for that. I think Pope Francis has done some very good things, especially his encyclical Laudato Si and his taking on of Wall Street. He also, of course, has made some very appropriate enemies. But one thing he didn't do that was good, and it was related to that trip, was his canonizing of Junipero Serra. Horrible. I was working with the indigenous people in California to resist that, and it's a scandal that more Franciscans did not resist it. Absolute scandal how quiet the Franciscans were. Junipero Serra he'd been credited for, he had the mission system in California. It was really, the facts are out today, the scholarship has been done. They were concentration camps that destroyed the indigenous soul and culture terribly. And there's all kinds of proof of this. And I went to the Pope about that through a third party. I got to him. But I guess decisions are already made, and this thing about canonization has gotten so perverse in the Catholic Church. Pope John Paul II took away the devil's advocate from the process. So now all you need is money to put your guy up there and keep people away who have other stories to tell. The first one canonized under that project was, of course, the Opus Dei founder. Yes, he was the first one rushed into canonization, and they wouldn't let the people who really knew his dark side, his secretary lived with him for 7 years, worked with him for 7 years, tell the truth about he was a sexist pig, and among other things, as well as a fascist. So anyway, the whole project in Roman Catholicism has been completely tainted. That's just one of the dumbing downs of religion that has been done in the last 50 years on this planet. But anyway, I praise Pope Francis for what he's done that's good, and I criticize him for his canonization. One of the Indian elders I was working with said, if this Pope canonizes this guy, he will be making war on all the indigenous people around the world. That's how deeply the indigenous people felt about that horrible canonization. So, it's we all have to keep our critical faculties alive. We can praise where praise is due, and we criticize where criticism is due. Thank you. Thank you.